In this talk, we will learn about ecological succession. Ecological succession is the changes that happen in species and habitats over time. Different communities that are present in an ecosystem get replaced by others as time passes. This keeps happening until either a climax community is formed, where the communities tend to be in equilibrium with one another, and hence there's no major changes in the communities, or a disturbance occurs, which can be in the form of flooding or fires. There are different types of ecological succession, which includes the primary succession and the secondary succession. Primary succession involves the establishment of a community on a bare and lifeless substrate. It usually begins when microbes and small plants, which are simpler organisms and do not require soil, start inhabiting a region that, let's say, has rock. They form communities and hence start making changes to the environment. These organisms are called as pioneer species. Pioneer species are those that occupy the habitat first and start altering it. They start establishing conditions that allow other species to colonize and grow. Once pioneer species are established in the habitat, they help in the formation of soil. Once soil is formed, more complex plants can begin to grow. These complex plants start bringing in more nutrients that enter the ecosystem and allows conditions for other types of organisms to grow. With time, the biodiversity increases and more communities start colonizing that land. Ultimately, a climax community is formed. In a climax community, the communities live in harmony with one another. An example of a climax community is a forest, which has mature trees and different life forms that depend on that ecosystem. In a climax community, all the communities are at equilibrium with one another, and there isn't much change that happens in the communities. Keystone species are another type of species that positively influence ecosystems the way pioneer species do. Keystone species are those whose effects on the composition of communities are greater than expected. Keystone species are usually not the dominant species present in a community. They can help communities in different ways. Some example where keystone species help communities is by keeping the competition in check and by providing resources to the other organisms present in the community. Some examples of keystone species are elephants. Elephants can create watering holes during the dry season and thereby establish small places where animals can obtain water from. Bees are another example of keystone species because they play important roles in pollinating flowers and promoting fruit production. Secondary succession is another type of ecological succession that occurs in areas where an existing community has been disturbed. This disturbance can be due to factors like a fire, a flood, an earthquake, or others. In secondary succession, usually not all species die in this disturbance. There are some species that will remain. Now, these species will start altering the habitat. Secondary succession requires pioneer species that can help change the conditions present in that habitat and allow other species to grow, like the intermediate species. These changes keep happening until finally a climax community is found. Ecological succession is a complex process that takes time. Studying ecological succession promotes insight into how communities can form and change an ecosystem. It also helps in predicting how human interventions can cause changes in ecosystems. Ecological succession studies provide valuable insights into how to restore and strengthen natural systems. It can help scientists determine how to control invasive species and how controlled burning can prevent out-of-control wildfires. It also helps in protecting plants that can prevent flooding. Thus, learning about ecological succession has many positive impacts. With this, we come to the end of our talk, where we learned about ecological succession and the types of ecological succession. We learned about climax communities and primary succession, as well as secondary succession. We also learned about the role of pioneer and keystone species in ecological succession.